small companies. I think it should be small.
So
They can't just say there should be lots of small companies doing.
no, they need to be encouraged, it needs to be held.
Against them. The whole
Yes.
levy is not supported in any sort of effective way.
Well, it gives them 95%.
The BAs of this world, as ever now, will do marvellously well at big apprenticeships and degree apprenticeships, but we're making no progress at all between 16 and 24.
Well, that's so my last point is we need to fast track the introduction of new and the review of standards, which can deliver significant gains in qualities. They need to be broader standards with flexibility for employers and providers that can be updated more rapidly. At present, the updating takes between 3 and 5 years. Work has changed dramatically in the last few years with digitalisation, automation, AI, climate change effects, new practices of working and living, and retail. Indeed, in many ways, in the last years of the pandemic, we've undergone more than 20 years change incredibly rapidly. We're having to review our degree apprenticeship content much more rapidly to keep them relevant in the fast developing world of work. And apprenticeship standards need to be developed and reviewed as well.
Liz, thank you very much indeed. The event I was at this morning with Lord Aberdare, who's just walked in, which was construction steelmakers, one point they were making is that they really need level 2 apprentice skills. But the figure they quoted was something like colleges got £5,000 for level 2, but 27,000 for level 3. Is that right? And so obviously the incentive, the incentive is very much on level 3, but actually for industries where they really need level 2, it's very, very difficult for them to get these youngsters through. Is that's?
It depends which area.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the funding is very random.
Yes, yes. And the other thing that we always have a beef about is the fact that the underspent levy goes back into the training. Now, we've long argued it should go back into education and training, but the government doesn't seem to be terribly open. It's all right, my friend over there, I know he's in the government really, but he wouldn't think it. You wouldn't always know. Thank you very much. That's a fantastic start to us. And so we're now going to Doniya Soni-Clark, who I think is online. Are you online? Are you with us?
Yes, I am. Hopefully you can hear me in the room.
Head of Policy and Public Affairs at Multiverse. Doniya, will you please then you speak to us for 5 to 10 minutes?
Yeah, absolutely. And do let me know if there's any issues with the sound in the room. But yes, I'm Doniya. I'm the head of policy and public affairs at Multiverse. Multiverse is an independent apprenticeship training provider. We've got over 12,000 apprentices who are either on program or have completed a program. And our offering is mainly focused on tech and digital apprenticeships in a variety of sectors. So while we offer digital skills training, the sectors in which we work are very varied. For instance, one of our biggest clients is the NHS, but also organizations like Jaguar Land Rover. So a very diverse range of clients that we work with. Multiverse is also unique insofar as that it's one of the only training providers that has degree awarding powers as well. So we are able to deliver degree apprenticeships, which is very exciting. But I will touch on that shortly as well about what we think is important in the next general election when it comes to apprenticeships. So having delivered apprenticeships for a significant amount of time now to a large number of people, we do think that overall apprenticeship sorry, we just got a message saying NHS uses hundreds of apprenticeship providers. Absolutely. And it's just that NHS is our biggest client in that we have the most apprentices of ours with the NHS, not that we are the NHS's largest provider, just to clarify that. Shari should have been more clear about that. So just to go back to about what we'd like to see in apprenticeships post-election, apprenticeship quality is really important and something that actually has been increasing. And as the speaker before me had mentioned, it isn't popular to necessarily say that apprenticeships are doing well, and because there are definitely things that need to be improved, of course. But overall, there's a huge number of apprentices that have been increasing in sectors such as tech that we think is incredible, particularly because there's such a skills gap in this area. The ability for people to access apprenticeships now is greater than before, and the quality of apprenticeships is greater than before, as Ofsted regulates it in a sort of consistent way. And we've moved away from the old frameworks to the new standards that are more employer-led. So those are some of the things that I think are working well for us and what we think are positive. In some of the areas post-election that we would like to see reform in, is firstly, while we completely agree and believe that regulation of apprenticeships is appropriate and necessary, if one does deliver degree apprenticeships like we do, and a lot of the universities that are present on this call do as well, there are a lot of double and overlapping regulations, which then deter more individuals from pursuing degree apprenticeships and providers from delivering apprenticeships. And that is because you end up having to give a lot of time to doing double amounts of data returns and regulations to both the ESFA, IFATE, Ofqual, Ofsted, and the Office for Students. So it ends up being quite burdensome for providers, meaning that there's less degree apprenticeships, which are becoming more popular. Secondly, there's a lot of conversation from actually most and all parties about introducing flexibility to the apprenticeship levy, which is not something that we are opposed to in principle. And, you know, having the opportunity for shorter, more modular, flexible courses is not something that's inherently bad or wrong. However, there needs to be some due thought and credence given to how those short courses are regulated in such a way that they maintain the quality of apprenticeships, and that they maintain the quality of vocational training or lead towards an apprenticeship. One of the biggest risks we see is that there is a risk of organizations delivering short courses that aren't as rigorous or as quality assured as apprenticeships. And that is a huge area that we would want to see addressed by whichever government is in power. And lastly, sort of touching on the first point about regulation for degree apprenticeships and regular apprenticeships, the overall regulatory sequencing for apprenticeships is quite complicated and requires a huge number of different government bodies. As I mentioned, IFATE, ESFA, Ofsted, Department for Education. And I think that there's a real opportunity to bring together a huge number of these regulators to create a more seamless process for both businesses and providers, just so that there's an ability for more people to do an apprenticeship. And in that regulatory point, I think that it is worth having a look at some of the requirements to complete an apprenticeship, in particular, the requirement to have a level 2 in English and maths, because we believe that that's causing some barriers to entry for people who could really benefit from an apprenticeship at all stages of their life. So that is something that we would hope that any future government would also look at. So that was a quick whistle-stop tour of some of our thinking. Very happy to answer questions now or at the end.
Thank you very much, Doniya. Yes, this business of level 2 English and math, or GCSE English and maths, is something which we have long addressed, because you know it's totally irrelevant for most apprenticeships to know about Shakespeare or quadratic equations, which are the bedrock. And so having different sorts of English and maths texts are absolutely essential. But I think the current alternatives are not far different from GCSE, as I understand. So they're not really helping terribly to bring forward youngsters who could actually be brilliant with maths applied to their interest, but which I remember years ago when I was teaching French at a school, and the domestic science teacher asked the maths teacher me to go and look at what her girls had done in domestic science, whatever it was called. We knew these girls were useless at French, which I was teaching, and useless at maths, which I got. And we wanted to, and these girls who were useless at maths had worked out costings, timings, temperatures, calorie content, or you know, all these other things because they were really interested in it. So actually having this barrier of level 2 of GCSE English and maths, I think is quite appalling. And I think we must do whatever we can to do away with that, to ensure that more, because we've had a horrible drop-off in young people going into apprenticeships, and some of that will be at the door of those barriers for English and maths. Thank you very much for that. Anyway, I always rile a bit when you say how these are better because they're employer-led. As I say, I worked for City and Guilds for over 20 years, and all vocational qualifications have always been employer-led. So when the government was introducing its T levels, God help us, they said these were revolutionary because they're employer. And my blood was boiling. I said, no. You always, workplace qualifications have always been employer-led. This is not something brilliant. Anyway, we now move on to John. So, John, over to you. I think you've got to share your views on apprenticeships, please.
That's what I will do, and apologies from Munira Wilson MP who couldn't be here. But I got asked to do this partly because I'm a Lib Dem peer, partly because I'm aware of Lib Dem policy, but also because I chaired the House of Lords Select Committee, which reported 2 years ago on skills for every young person and has a basically about youth unemployment and how you reduce it. Well, actually was about developing skills for every young person. And could I just say that if you haven't read the report or seen it, it really is well worth it. It's 214 pages or so. And Lord Baker here was a tremendous help, a member of that committee. But it did do a huge amount of work over during the COVID period for about a year in investigating these issues. Much of what it said holds still. Look, this morning, I attended a Homes England breakfast briefing on their 5-year plan to 2029. And in the course of it, you learn several things, but 2 things stood out for me. One was that the cost of a secondary school, the average price, has risen in 5 years from £18 billion to just over £30 billion. And secondly, that the average age of those employed as electricians or as bricklayers is 47 in this country. And I realise that I have been talking about that problem of the age profile of our technical workforce now for as long as I can remember, and it doesn't seem to change, and it clearly has to change. And we just referred to the decline in numbers taking up apprenticeships, particularly of the 16 to 17-year-olds. And we've seen and heard about the levy, which in many ways is a good thing, but in the 7 years, 6, 7 years that it's been operational, there is evidence that some employers have spent a lot of the levy on existing employees by rebadging training courses as apprenticeships. And indeed, the National Audit Office in 2019 wrote a report about this, saying that a number of employers are supplanting their existing training programs with apprenticeships. Look, having worked all my career with the Open University, I'm not going to say anything which reduces the potential impact of education for individuals. Of course, all education, in a sense, all apprenticeships for the individual may be really very good if they otherwise wouldn't be doing it. The problem is that the whole technical apprenticeship route is seen as secondary to the conventional route of which schools are being assessed, which is based on Ofsted requirements and the academic university route. And of course, the other 50% of kids who don't go to university, not enough is invested in them. Hence, there is a £500 million gap in the FE sector that it just does not have enough money. I'm really pleased with what I've heard twice, I think, about level 2 apprentices. Look, level 2, you forget about that. You use the word, Liz, aspiration from level 2 seems to me to be absolutely central and fundamental. The critical thing is, for me, what's happening to young people to get them into jobs which are long-term and give them long-term skills and dependency with their lifetime aspirations. And for me, apprenticeships priority should be from the age of 16, 18 through to 24. And so look, there need to be better financial incentives. Let me just quote, it's paragraph 203, if any, I really haven't got time to read through some of the key recommendations on apprenticeships. But if you were to look on page 102 of this report and paragraph 203, we are calling for the refocusing of public sector targets on new starters under 25, a 50% wage grant for apprentices under 25, abolishing the 5% employer co-investment for SMEs when taking on under 25s, but introducing a 10% co-investment rate for all businesses recruiting apprentices over 25. We wanted a cap for SMEs, removing the cap for levy transfer to help SMEs. We want to extend the 2-year expiry date for use of funds. There should be non-financial amendments to the use of levy funds, such as a maximum salary ceiling for levy-funded apprenticeships and removing qualifications at level 6 and above from scope. There was debate about that, you probably imagine there was. Subsequently, and then lowering the threshold for paying the apprenticeship levy to actively engage more SMEs in apprenticeships. Look, in 2 minutes soon, Lib Dem positions. So a lot of that is kind of, it strikes me that most parties actually ought these days to be supporting substantially what our committee is saying. We've wanted for a long time, Sue, the skills wallet, the £10,000 that everybody would have in $3 for courses which the Office of Students regulates. So I think the apprenticeship levy we would want to change to a skills and training levy with 25% of levy funds going into a social mobility fund. Liz, I think you talked about social mobility funds, particularly social mobility funding to support skills shortage areas. I've talked about FE. It has been a real problem list in the FE sector. They just do not have enough money to do what we need them to do. And that's a process. It doesn't get put right in 1 or 2 years. We also want an annual tutoring fund for the kids who meet standards at Key Stage 2 in English and Maths and then don't get to achieve level 4 in GCSE. But I think we've talked about that issue. But there is a question about how you give extra support to those kids, particularly post-COVID, who have not managed well. Apprenticeship pay, I don't think anyone's mentioned this. We want it to be the same as the national minimum wage. Okay? And as a cost of that, I understand that, but that is the policy that our conference last year approved at Bournemouth. I mean, the dropout rate is really extraordinary, isn't it? If you look at healthcare and health and social care, 50%, manufacturing, 1 in 3 apprenticeships was dropping out. This cannot be right. And we don't put enough money into what I would call the levels 2, level 3, 16 to 24 area, age group. There has to be more investment there. Finally, the issue of the tax system. There need to be training tax credits for employers, a bit like R&D credits. Why don't we have, better tax credit systems for training? And why don't individuals who are paying for themselves have tax deductible expenses? There's thought been given to this. It's never actually happened. But why do we not do that? Other things can be tax deductible for individuals. Why can't we do for training? So I'll stop there.
Thank you very much. No, that's right. Our idea for this.
The most important recommendation in this report was that 3/4 of the levy should be spent on 16 to 24-year-olds.
Yes.
It is absurd to call people in their 40s and 50s apprentices. Absolutely absurd. They're going through management retraining. And all social mobility really focuses between 16 and 24. If someone is called an apprentice at 40, that's not going to change his social status in society at all in any significant way. It happens between 16 and 24. And I would hope, I'm not too part of the Conservative Party, they will not do this. I'm quite sure, which is a mistake. But the best recommendation was that 3/4 of the levy should be between 16 and 24 to training youngsters. And in addition to that, we also said that not only should small companies get £1,000 and more for helping with the cost of training, but you could say for small companies up to say 50 people, 50 employees, When they take on the somebody, not only will their training costs be covered, but their salary will be covered as well. That's a much better use of money than paying people 40 or 50 management training. And I don't think we grasp this as many parties grasp it, society hasn't grasped it. I run University Tech Plan. We produce now more apprentices than any other school. We produce hundreds of apprentices a year. A lot at level 2, many more at level 3. And 25% of our students become apprentices, whereas in an ordinary school it's only 3%. And it's, do you know, there are more people doing apprentices from 16 to 24 when learning was introduced than are doing apprentices now. There's actually been a drop in the urgent need which industry needs more than anything else. And you've got to give much more support to that age group, in my view.
Yeah. Well, we have, as I say, Ken and Alistair and I have recently been on this House of Lords Committee looking at 11-16 education. Our report came out before Christmas entitled "Requires Improvement, Urgent Need to Change" in 11-16. And because, you know, as John's indicated, the trouble is schools are measured on GCSEs, A levels, and university entries. And when in the heady days of coalition, when I was in Michael Gove's team, I said, why didn't he encourage all schools to celebrate their apprentice leavers with the same enthusiasm as their university? What a great idea, Sue, he said, and did absolutely nothing about it. And that really is a problem. Right, okay, we'll come to you, Liz, and then, yes.
Yes, just about further education, I do think there's a real point about the gap in funding. In all the colleges in our area, and a lot of them have stopped delivering things like electrical, carpentry, all those things that require space, even hospitality, because it requires huge amounts of space and infrastructure, and that has not been funded. And they've closed those areas and just delivering stuff that's much more simple. So it would be great. I know people of 17, 18 who want to get onto those apprenticeships, but nobody's delivering them in our area.
Yes, yes.
Of the motor industry.
Right.
Totally support what you're saying about funding bans, and I'm going to resist that urge to just stand in violent agreement to everything that you've said. We've really struggled with funding bans, particularly with our heavy vehicle technicians. There was an acknowledged mistake regarding that funding, which has since been corrected to the level it was 5 years ago, but hasn't actually seen any real increase. But I'm going to put that to one side. I feel we at the INI have come up with a workable solution that might be of interest for the very real need that we have for further education lecturers. As we have this huge skill shortage, we're losing FE lecturers as they go back to industry because there's a lot more money to be made with the skill shortage. But we do actually have a number of people, because we have an aging workforce as well, who are looking for that transition away from the shop floor and do want to go and deliver education, but they cannot be financially supported. So what I've proposed is a modelling that is, having come up with the idea, copying the military reservist idea. This is in support with the Warwick Manufacturing Group. We have a proposal. We think it will work. It already works for government military reservists. Let's get our skilled people supporting our colleges and get the young people the absolute real experience that they need in order to be able to develop that skill that industry needs. Because quite often what happens is once somebody leaves industry and enters the world of education, it's very difficult for them to maintain their CPD. If we had that flexibility to allow people to be seconded into education and then protected in the same way as our military reservists to go back to their job, and I have a paper I can show.
Thank you.
Thank
Send it around, please.
I got it. Thank you. The Secretariat allow me to send this to you. Thank you.
Okay, yes, we come here and then, yes.
Yeah, so my name's Charlotte Nichols, I'm the Labour Parliament Warrington North and the Labour co-chair of this committee. I had quite an interesting meeting actually yesterday as well, skills, which is a very similar theme there, because one of the things that is getting talked about is increasingly things to do with things like apprentice pay, for example, but there's not really been much discussion around who's going to be teaching all of these apprentices if suddenly everyone starts taking up the courses, which is something that we all hope will happen. But you know, speaking to, we have the University Technical College in Warrington, we also have a number of FE colleges, and it's the same story that you're hearing from a lot of them around the difficulty for particular kinds of specialist technical trades, where what they're getting paid for delivering that training versus what they get paid for doing their job, and their day job can be quite substantially different. And I think we do need to look in the way that the government have, you know, it's an imperfect document and it's come very late. Else, but the NHS workforce plan, for example, something that runs in the same sort of way for what we're hoping will happen with apprenticeships. And I just wanted to slightly disagree with the point that you made before about 18 to 24-year-olds, because one of the things that we certainly see a lot of in my area is people that are transitioning to a different sector in the middle of their career. So particularly in things like nuclear, but also in railway, construction engineering and things like that. I think I would have a real difficulty as someone that in parliamentary terms is relatively young, having people have two different job titles based purely on their age, because if you say that one of them is an apprentice because they're 18 to 24, and you give the other one a better job title, even though it's effectively the same thing, they're still in a training type role just because they're 35, I think you end up almost devaluing the status of the apprentice, which is something you're not seeking to do in the same way that, you know, I have real difficulty with, you know, national minimum wage findings based on what their age is versus the quality of the job they're doing, their productivity and so on. I think we have to be careful about saying that apprenticeships are something which is only for 18 to 24-year-olds if we're going to meet skills shortages in certain other key sectors.
It's a very interesting point, yes. So we'll come to the end of the table and then over there, yes.
I'm Fiona Roberts. I work for UCU, University and College Union. And I'd love to see your paper, maybe we can touch base at the end. And I'd like to pick up on the FE points and the shortage of resources in FE. So of course, a great portion of our members are FE lecturers. And I had a member come to me last year, and her college in the Midlands had a very poor Ofsted reports. So we're all quite familiar with hearing about poor or Ofsted reports in the news. But what we are less familiar with hearing about is the reason for those poor Ofsted reports. And behind that poor Ofsted report was a college that could not recruit or retain their staff. And we've carried out plenty of studies about the salaries of staff over the last few years. And the most recent figure I have is that FE tutors will today be recruited at £30,000 a year. Now, people tell me that it's not possible to live, that it is not a living wage, they cannot live on that salary. There is talk about FE tutors working in second and even in third jobs to make ends meet. And the salary is not the only point. Our surveys show as well that FE lecturers work an additional 2 days, not per month in addition to their contract, but per week. And I worked for the Open University for 20 years in addition to my policy work. And I can testify from personal experience that that is consistent with my own experience as well.
Yes, 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 it is. Right, we'll go there and then we'll go to open.
Thank you. Brett, Builders Merchants Federation, we're 900 companies, 250,000 people, and we're worth 45 billion. My question, the reason why I come to these meetings is because, unlike other all-party parliamentary groups, this is an all-party group. In the room, for the people on the video, there is Conservative, there is Labour, there is Liberal Democrat, and we have crossbenchers like Lord Aberdare. So this is generally said, we've got South and South East, we've got the North West, we've got Wales, we've got the North East. This is genuinely worth an hour of my time plus the bus fare to come.
Oh,
So,
the
so,
bus.
so
Oh, do you not have a freedom?
I'm not that old yet soon, but. So this is, so thank you for organising these. These are worth coming to, point one. Point two, any meeting that's got Ken Baker in is going to be a good meeting, full stop. So that's good. My question therefore is about two dates on the horizon. It'll very soon be National Apprentices Week. And in case you don't know, there's a budget on the 6th of March. Now, I realise you're going to say, well, we're not a lobbying group. I understand that, but individuals in this room, some of us are lobbyists. So my question is going to be the Spice Girls question is, Jeremy Hunt, 6th of March. What do we really, really want? One or two things, gold, bronze, silver. What is it we want? What's the Spice Girls question? What do we really, really want for him to say when the rest of us download the 120-page green book and have to go through it at 4:30 because he didn't mention it in the House? What do we really, really want? It would be the question. Through you, Sue, and Charlotte as co-chair.
Yes.
As a cabinet minister in the room, Ken, what do we really want?
Well, I don't think you're going to touch upon the princes at all, because what has happened is the levy is a large sum of money which the Treasury doesn't really control. This is most unusual for any Treasury, and so they want it back as much as they can. And I don't think that will change if there's government change of heart, which might happen, I understand. I think they will still be looking very hard at getting back that money back from the levy. And that's a great disappointment, because the other thing I think that any new government's going to experience over the next few years is rising youth unemployment. And with rising youth unemployment, you're going to need a thing like the levy to actually help 16, 17, and 18-year-olds who are faced with unemployment. It's going to be a major instrument of useful money. And I think that those in the education department of the next government will be fighting the Treasury a lot, very hard indeed, to try and keep it.
Yeah, I mean, I think Rachel Reeves is going to be fighting near enough everyone who wants anything. Next election, she controls the purse strings. But ultimately, I think some of the stuff that Lydia's talking about industrial strategy will certainly help be a good lever for some of the things that we're trying to do through this group, because I think it's very difficult to set out a kind of roadmap for apprenticeships if we haven't decided what particular industries or sectors need them and so on. There's sort of everything being a little bit kind of ad hoc in recent years, at least if we've got something that's a bit more end to end, and maybe some decisions around letting infrastructure projects, for example.
Joined up strategy, joined up
That might
government.
help us make better use of what we have is available.
Alistair, over to you.
Thank you, Sue, and I apologise for running late. I want to release some of the bees that are continuing to buzz in my bonnet, and this particular one is not enough apprenticeships in SMEs. Lord Shipley and Lord Baker both talked about encouraging this. I think part of the problem is that it's not just money that SMEs need, it's the way of dealing with the huge amount of bureaucracy.
Yes, absolutely.
And there are these, well, there have been a whole series of things. You know, we used to have ATAs and then GCAs, and we've now got flexi-job apprenticeship agencies. I'm sorry, I missed what Liz said, but I don't know whether either Liz or Doniya have experience of effective ways of helping SMEs to employ apprenticeships and finding good ways of having to work together to do that. Whether it's through, I've never had anybody tell me about a flexi job agency and what it's doing, and whether it's working or not. So that would be an interesting question for a start.
I know a lot of FE colleges do try and help SMEs. They do have programs to try, but the bureaucracy is still.
Well, I think the idea is,
Yes.
It can be a postcode lottery as well.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yes, yes, it can.
of course, the idea of a
Yes.
flexi job agency
yes, so-
was to provide that.
Yes.
So just going on comment, I'm from Manchester Met as well. So about 30% of our employers are SMEs, and we do a huge amount of work to support them. The bureaucracy is still there. We counted up recently. To read the funding rules and all of the documents linked in those funding rules is 300 pages. It's approximately the length of Wuthering Heights. No SME is going to read that in order to take on. So we have to bridge that gap hugely for them. I would also just take the opportunity to say, we have some wonderful older apprentices, our social workers, our nurses, our paramedics who are incredibly proud of that brand. And I just spoke to people, and so if anybody need anything, we would.
Yeah, thank you very much. Right, yes, Jess.
It's Richard Henry from BA Systems.
Oh, yes,
Sort of
yes.
complementary to what colleges and providers might do. Large employers can overtrain and support the supply chain. At the moment, there are restrictions on funding, but in the past, with the Employment Skills Initiative, BA Systems with Rolls-Royce, Jaguar Land Rover as well, number of employers, we were able to train for smaller companies. That takes the bureaucracy away from the smaller companies. We were doing the training in the first year, and the apprentices were with us when they were unproductive, and then the issue about the finance and things like that. And then years 2 and 3, we were focusing on the level 3.
Yes,
And on the younger apprentices by and large, the supply chain and engineering manufacturing.
Yes.
I think something like that would be complementary to some of the other things that we talked about. It's something that could be looked at again, so mechanism, chair and group to think about the possibilities. So that's working with.
Yes,
I think we're going to need a massive number of apprenticeships in the course of drilling is in the atomic area. We're going to build so many nuclear power stations. Not only do you need graduates to do this, you need a lot of technicians who actually understand it. And the amount of training in this area, as you will know, is very, very limited. We haven't really got a bedlock in the gap. The next government will have to focus upon the nuclear industry in a big way.
Yes.
We're part of that.
You're part of
that.
Yes,
Part of submarines. So we use this as
Yes. Yes.
So does chair of your party.
I don't know whether any questions from the screens. I can't see any hands up there. Are there any hands up there? Are you able to? No? In which case, yes, please do come in.
So my name is Jamie Hall. I represent some defence and aerospace companies, and they're usually on the smaller side, definitely SMEs. And an issue that they've definitely been facing, one in particular, is the access to the levy fund. So they have to pay so much into the levy, and in one example, over the course of the last year, I think they've only been able to use 4% of those funds. So it's it does hamstring them in terms of wanting to get new apprentices on, and they are part of the military flying training system. So right at the start of getting pilots in the air to protect our skies, etc. So quite essential for national defence, and they can't support apprenticeships. So what is the government going to do, or what can this APPG do to push the government to widen the scope of the apprenticeship levy?
Yes.
Because it's too narrow.
Yes, I'm on the council of the Air League, which funds an awful lot of the flying training for cadets. So I chair the cadet project as well. And that's, very powerful cadets, a fantastic organisation. And again, a lot of them are trying to get into apprenticeships because their cadet training teaches them the best way to do. I can't read that, I'm afraid. Could somebody read whatever the question is that's up there?
I'm happy to read out. Would there be any scope to reconsider the 3-year UK residency eligibility criteria? This would help the health and social care sector significantly. And local authorities commission social care as well.
Not up in immigration enough to be able to. Does anybody have a view on that? And I think the other thing is the salary thresholds, which is not helping to get. But that would be if we were bringing in people from other countries to do our apprenticeships. I don't think that's necessarily going to help our own home apprenticeships. But we need to continue this culture change. As I said all the time at City and Guilds, we are always battling this view that everything academic was brilliant and everything vocational wasn't. And that's not how this country has grown great. But actually trying to overcome that, and particularly with parents, trying to get parents to realise that wanting their kids to go to university might not be the best thing for them, but if they've got inbuilt skills, they need to be encouraged to do that breadth.
But all the years that we've been kindly meeting, despite my rather over flamboyant praise of this group earlier, is that we've always posed the question, what is it that you as parliamentarians, civic leaders, and us as businessmen and women, how do we persuade parental prejudice not to send their little darlings off to university to come back, hopefully with only 35, if not 40,000 millstone around their neck? My companies need carbon consultants and energy engineers now to get us moving towards the kind of economies that, again, in a few months' time, the 4 major parties are going to be asking me to vote for them. How do I tell my companies, what is it more that the guests in this room and online can do to persuade parents that their little angels don't need to go?
Yes, yes.
They also read our report that we
Yes,
just
do,
published.
please do
on
read our
11/16,
report. Yes.
Because we come out against the curriculum, EBAC and progress aid very, very strongly. They're not, the schools today are jobs where they do 8 academic subjects, which is the same as they were in 1904. It's a grammar school curriculum. And I do hope whoever wins the next election will now realise they've got to change the basic curriculum and have many more technical subjects, practical subjects, and leading up to apprenticeships. Because if you still keep them doing those 8 subjects, you will not get the numbers wanting to become apprentices or to become technicians. You've got to start training technicians. That's what we need. We really must do it.
Well,
objective standard. I mean, schools have much greater flexibility around what it is they're teaching.
Yeah, but they
can't really, they're judged at the end of the day on those 8 subjects.
Yes.
Quite frankly.
We've got 5,000 apprentices. We've over 60 different spheres, 60 different types of apprenticeship. Encouraging different groups, having more young women to want to be work experience. Getting young people, girls to have work experience. They're trying to get parents, most often the mum. You get the mum there on the final day. So when they hear what their siblings tell them, children about what they've done. Rather than walk a conversation and go home and mum says, what did you do at the assistant? She said, well, I did some weddings. It's probably not what you want to do. And if she actually sees her own daughter and other young women, and also role models from say PA systems, all your daughter are saying, and I'm now I've done a degree, I'm now going on these jobs. All that goes through their head unconscious.
Yes.
And that's supporting us and supporting the huge growth of numbers.
Yes. Folks, we've only got about 3 more minutes. So is anybody willing to rise to Brett's challenge of what do we really, really want? Or shall I just ask our speakers?
Promote degree apprenticeships.
Sorry?
Promote degree apprenticeships.
Yes.
Degree apprenticeships, they're wonderful. And you have to have them, otherwise you'll go bust.
Well, no, not really, but it does help.
Universities are now desperate for money.
No, but we don't make a lot of money out of them. They're very complicated to deliver.
Yes, you do, because otherwise you will go bust, even your grade.
I mean, the thing is that parents, if you tell them they can do, the child can do an apprenticeship and get to do a degree apprenticeship, we've had to do a lot of persuasion around that, but a lot of parents are now thinking that is a good idea. They go into good jobs and get good wages. So I think it has broken down the prejudice a bit.
Doniya, over there, have you got a last word for us if we can hear you, which has been a little bit difficult?
Yeah, absolutely. Just that, in terms of what we really want is to ensure that the regulation and quality assurance around apprenticeships remains robust regardless of whatever government comes into power, and ensure that we are consistently improving the quality and reputation of apprenticeships, which I know sounds easy, or like it sounds like a far-fetched, but I do think that is happening, and I do think that more people, especially parents, are happy with their children doing apprenticeships as they start to see the long-term benefits of apprenticeships, and I think that putting apprenticeships on UCAS will do a long way of improving reputation of apprenticeships.
also add, there's an automotive campaign. Researched this issue hugely about the perception of the motor industry and what were the barriers to engagement for young people entering our sector. And what we arrived at was we didn't need to change the perception. We needed to change the industry and highlight what is already happening, how it is more tech focused, how there are more women within the sector. I'm an ex-spanner twirler. This is what a mechanic looks like. And that's where my career started. And the ladder of opportunity is only as accessible as its first rung. So in answer to the budget question, level 2 qualifications do need to be taken seriously.
Absolutely.
And they need to progress into our level 3.
Yes, John, have you got a last word for us?
Yeah, it's a process, isn't it, all of this, but we need to do it more quickly. My definition of success, you think of a secondary school with railings outside and banners down it, which says our latest Ofsted rating, whenever it's good or outstanding. The number of successes at A level of GCSE, number of university entries. You'll actually have a big banner which is a number of apprenticeships that have been started by students from the school, and then it becomes a kind of equal status thing on the school rankings.
It's a small banner at the moment.
It's a very small one, in most cases.
Well, we need the aspirations to become as a big banner and that youngsters do understand what this is. I think we've come together. Thank you all very much indeed, and thank you for bearing with me in my rather ad hoc chairing. But it's lovely to see everybody